I'm here to answer the question how quantum storytelling runs your business. I'm David Boje, member of growthod.org. So, quantum storytelling is a framework merging the process of becoming with quantum theory, viewing stories as entangled processes in organizations and communities. In any business, we're always focused on the stuff we can see, right? The performance metrics, the big strategic planning document, the table of organizations, slick branding images. But what if I told you that the most important forces shaping your entire organization are, well, completely invisible? Now, I want to talk to you about living systems. And I'm going to use the idea of a tree that has a lot of branches and leaves, and then below the surface, the deep roots. And I'm going to argue that it's those deep roots that are important in organizational development. So traditional storytelling manages brand perception and masks dysfunctions to preserve reputation. Now, in the Growth OD approach, the aims of collective healing and systematic repair is what I'm focusing on in quantum storytelling. Today, we're going to look beneath the surface, right, at the roots, at the hidden aspects of quantum storytelling. So there's the stuff that we can see above ground, right? And sometimes our above ground branches and trees are kind of in a bad state of winter or have had a storm. And other times it's summer and spring and they're thriving above ground and hopefully below ground. Now, this is a soulful and holistic approach to storytelling. It integrates 5 interwoven sciences of consulting and coaching. But let me talk to you about quantum physics. Well, the quantum physicists look at the double slit experiment, right? And there's some kind of phenomenon where waves are collapsed. And the choice you make affects the kind of part of the double slit and what happens. And that's the way I look at this quantum weirdness. Now, we can go into depth of the science and disagreements about interpretations of the double slit, but I'm just looking at the visible canopy of the tree, and I'm looking at below ground what's the hidden aspects. Now, one of the quantum physicists is Fred Alan Wolf, and he looks at the synchronicities, the more mythical and spiritual, even shamanistic elements that resonates in his quantum concepts. On the other hand, you have people such as Karen Barad, very popular, advocates Niels Bohr approach to quantum physics and understanding of the double slit experiment, and it is very much in disagreement with Werner Heisenberg because of his lifestyle during World War II and his politics, and just doesn't appreciate his interpretation of like the observer effect. So let's look at another person, Slavoj Žižek, and he approaches the political sociology of quantum physics in a little bit different way and preserves some of the spiritual aspects that he sees. One of my good colleagues is Leroy Littlebear, does Blackfoot metaphysics and talks about quantum physics and the interrelationship of all life. So we see a lot of differences in quantum physics approach. Some prefer David Bohm's process-oriented approach. I look at something I call quantum storytelling, and I'm a co-founder of the Quantum Storytelling Conference that meets each December. This year we're meeting in Los Angeles, middle of December. Contact me at growthod.org if you want to find out more about it. Now, my work on quantum storytelling is something to do with Mikhail Bakhtin's work on many voices in a symphony, or what he calls a polyphony. polyphony, so other people pronounce it that way, with our existence. More accurately, a coexistence and a co-being with other interacting consciousness. You can see that in his book on Dostoevsky's Poetics. You look at page 6, footnote A, if you want to get technical. Well, I'm interested in a difficult conversation in the quantum energy field, what I call the quantum energy field. Human beings, all life has energy. In Leroy Little Bear and a lot of approaches, all things have a quantum energy. And Karen Barad as well, as space-time mattering. Now, what I bring to the table is the construct of anti-narrative, A-N-T-E narrative. And these are little fragments of stories that circulate around the quantum field. I'm also going to talk to you about the Tomorrowland, which is something I wrote about in Academy of Management Journal way back. And it's been cited quite a bit, and it's a pretty famous study. So Tomorrowland is a state where no one in an organization sees the full story. Not the CEO, not the strategic planning, not the C-suite, not the people on the front line. We see fragmented bits of it. Now, in Tomorrowland, think of an organization having many different rooms, and there's storytelling going on in the different rooms in the different buildings of an organization, but you can't be everywhere at once, so you can't possibly see all the storytelling happening. And that's one of the reasons that organization change fails. It's an investigation that I'm doing of the polyphony of quantum storytelling voices in an organization, in that Tomorrowland building where people are in different rooms doing different things and telling different stories and having different beliefs and having different histories, and then moving on paths between rooms during the day and the week and the months. And depending on what path you've taken between the rooms and buildings of an organization, that's going to be the meaning you have of what's going down in that room. So companies pour millions of dollars for huge change initiatives, new strategies, big restructuring, retooling, but most of them completely fizzle out and you don't get that change. And I think it has to do with the second point here. Why do most businesses in transformation and change fail, or they don't achieve the change? Achieving a change in a large, complex organization or even a small business is a difficult thing to pull off. Now, I want to talk to you about why that is, something I call the story filters. We're only looking at about 10% of the problem in our storytelling in a traditional approach. We're spending all that time on the leaves of the trees, above ground, the visible things, but the real issues are down at the roots where we can't see. So there's a massive 90% why we're totally blind to it of phenomenon in the trunk, in the branches, and definitely below ground. It's a feature of how our brains are wired that I want to talk to you a little bit about. So we encounter 11 million bits of data. The light in the room, the temperature, the sound of my voice, the things competing when you're watching this, and you're filtering those out. And the kind of story you have at the time and all the stories you've grown up with in your life filter out a lot of information. I call it the story filter. The brain's bouncer, like a bar bouncer, filtering reality, keeping a lot of stuff out of the bar based on your own past beliefs and personal stories, your plans, your unspoken stories, the subconscious stories. All of that comes into play. So let me talk to you about the quantum energy potential. Did you know that your brain processes these 11 million bits of sensory information, but only about 11 bits get through, 50 bits maybe, if you're lucky, 50 bits of information. So that means most of the information in a story, you've already filtered it out with cultural beliefs, fears, opinions, beliefs, what you value and don't value. So that's a big part of what a story filter is. And it's one of the things that I've originated, and I hope you like it. It's only 50 bits out of that 11 million is getting through into to you. And then if you put people in a room, they do brainstorming and strategy meeting, sharing stories. Unless you're doing something fundamental, you're not going to get past those 50 bits of input. You're not going to get anywhere near 100, 1,000, a million, or 11 million sensory bits of buzzing information around you. 99.9% of reality is filtered out by story filters. That's my hypothesis. It's running your business that brings the most critical part of any organization. And you want to get down into that 99.9% that's being filtered out by beliefs, stories, opinions, metaphors, etc. And you get to number two here, get to your company's roots, get to the what's below the surface that you're not seeing. So the real story isn't in your mission statement or your handbooks or the meetings or the annual reports. There's something else going on that we want to talk about. So you can find out more about this at growthod.org, all about quantum storytelling, and the new books that are out there. There's a couple of them you can download for free until we go to publication. So our most authentic self often hide. We have a lot of dialogues in the mind here, voices I hear from my parents, my teachers, my critics, my own ego, fears. And some of these voices try to sabotage me. Okay, so, and and it's not that I'm insane. It's just that that's what normal people are all about. They have an ego. They've got inner critics. They got fear of being, proven wrong or whatever. So they're trying to hold up a facade. So in Tomorrowland, no one sees the whole story. And we go from room to room, and I'll try to put some images here for you to see the Tomorrowland images. And everyone follows their own path in going room to room, meeting to meeting throughout the day and week and month of an organization. And you're not seeing it all. I hope I've made that point. So I did a lot of work with Disneyland as tomorrow, or the whole Disney Corporation, Disneyland, and the stores and the whole history, Walt Disney and Michael Eisner, Ron Miller, etc., up into the current time. And there's a lot of hidden stories. There's a facade of Walt Disney is the gentle grandfatherly figure, and then there's other stories that he was pretty autocratic and pretty tyrannical, and you don't see that. And just like most corporations, just about all I know, all of them put on a facade, put on a reputational shield around themselves, and you don't see the huffing and puffing and the disorder, and sometimes some pretty abused workers and just barely getting by. So at a place like Disney, you have at least three stories going on at once. First, stay in character of that reputation. Second, you got an underground or under the root system stories that you're not seeing through that reputation, right? Then there's a third story of a hopeful, unfinished anti-narrative. The anti-narrative is basically a story of what if. What if we took stories of reputation and we looked beneath them? What if we went before them and looked at the deep history? What if we looked at whole bunches of futures that are coming now and didn't just take a linear path? So these are some of the anti-narratives that we look at in quantum storytelling. Now, I'm part of the Growth OD group, and you can find us at growthod.org. We got 5 tools. One's called Purview, one's called Glow, one's called Seam, one called Souls, one called AAM. I'm going to talk to you about three of them today. One of them is the purview process. It's got 7 steps, PERVIEW. And it's a process where you get at these hidden stories, processes, you know, you get at that 99%, 99.9. It's wow. Uh, so you expand your understanding of storytelling, you embodied feelings, beliefs, the traumatic internal thoughts, the dialogue going on that prevents you from even approaching the dialogue that's going out there in a room, in an organization. So the process itself has these 7 steps that we do. And it begins with like appreciative inquiry, appreciating what you're doing right and well, and recalling when you did something extraordinary. So we start with the positive, and then we uh, externalize so that you give the more deficit stuff going on with you a label like Mr. Miser or Mr. Procrastinator or something like that. So we can get a little distance. We externalize to get a little bit of distance from it. So those are some of the steps. One of the more important steps is to look at why that story is in place. Okay, any story in place that's stuck story or filtering is in place because of some phenomenon, some experience, something that's going on with you. So we look at a next step to find out what are the consequences of that? What are your missed opportunities, your missed futures? What's the bigger picture here? And to do that, we cultivate these little wow moments of exceptions. Significant change doesn't happen by attacking the big problem head on. It's by finding little wow moments where that problem was conquered a little bit for a little while. So we externalize, we find the exceptions in little wow moments, and we do something called restoring. And it's really simple. We gather up all the little wow moments and then we publicize. So we begin focusing on the strengths. We externalize the problem. We study why it's there. What are the consequences? We build a new story by amassing these little wow moments. 5, 10 of them is probably enough to build a new story of the future so we can break the cycle with the past. And then we share it and we ask you form a support group. So that's purview. Another one I'll just mention briefly is my Olivia Parr Rudd and Tom Lemke have Glow. A lot of focus on gratitude, love, and organizational wisdom. They've got prompts you can go to test out your organizational wisdom, what kind of leader you are, what kind of glow you have. And Tom Lemke has a wonderful book that I work in a journal each day about what I'm grateful for the day. So let's look at the high cost of not understanding quantum storytelling. And I'm going to talk to you about the SEAM approach, SEAM, the socioeconomic approach to management. I taught this stuff for over 20 years at New Mexico State University. My wife and I, Rosile and Rosile, went every year to France for over 20 years, every summer, and I taught in the universities there, taught the doctoral students, undergrads, master's students, whatever I needed to pay for the trip, you know? So SEAM says that 50% of the costs are invisible to the financial statements, annual reports, quarterly reports, and they're just not showing up in the P&L statements. So they've got more activity-based costing they do to get at financial dysfunctions of simple things going on in organizations that recur frequently, turnover, lack of time management, communication, coordination, cooperation issues, on and on, that keep people from spending quality time with their strategy and focus or understanding what are the 50% of costs that are invisible on these reports. So 50% of a typical company's costs are completely invisible to the standard financial report. That's my premise here. They do a meeting they call a mirror effect, where they gather up verbatim notes from just observing all the stories, all the meetings, having some interviews, seeing if they can expand that unknown region of the storytelling, the quantum storytelling, the interrelation of everything to everybody else, the energy field that we all, I don't know, you walk in a room, you sense the energy there when things are going, or when things are joyful. I can. I bet you can too. So there's an energy field. And what we do is we try to understand the qualitative information, quantitative, financial, put it together in something they call qualimetrics, and that allows us to get closer to understanding what these hidden costs are, how frequently they happen, and what's the bottom line impact financially, and more than financially, like high turnover, burnout, lack of engagement of your customers, suppliers, employees. We look at the development of human potential, the cost of human potential for an organization that's behaving in less than optimally. So every single one is a symptom of a deeper story, these hidden costs, these dysfunctions. And if you can get a hold of these hidden costs, you can have a 200% increase in revenue. This is documented in 2,000 organizations where SEAM has been applied. The cost, for example, to replace an employee is often 100 to 300% more than their annual salary. I know with the millennial turnover worldwide, the cost is approaching $1 billion. For a century, business has been entirely dominated by shareholder capitalism, which maximizes the quantitative stuff on your quarterly reports, your annual report, the dividends, etc. But there's a lot more to a business model than that. So we like stakeholder capitalism. It's something that's been actively engaged by Mason and Mitroff and David Cooperrider in Appreciative Inquiry more lately. So a move from just looking at narrow measures of dollars and profits and dividends, etc., and looking at the larger value of human potential. And we can create value for all. One of the groups we work with is Axiogenics, looks at the net value is the intrinsic value, not just the extrinsic or the system roles we're in, but the intrinsic. And it's part of what we call souls. If you want to know what it stands for, go look it up. We also work with Boje as part of it. And I want to just say a couple of things about one of the things in Growth OD we look at is triple loop learning. I've taught at UCLA when there was double loop learning, Archer and Schoen, and just about everybody was doing their dissertation on double loop learning, moving from single to double loop. Well, I'm working with my wife on the triple loop, which is ensemble leadership called hierarchy. And it means there's multiple ways of organizing in an organization. And the single loop, that self-correcting hierarchy that we have, the cybernetic, we don't just toss it out. It's good for some things. We like the double loop of an open system, a learning organization. Keep that in the Archers and Schoen tradition. Triple loop is an ensemble where we gather all of the different kinds of organizing loops together and we manage them, especially when we're doing innovations and storytelling groups and theme groups and doing projects to transform dysfunctions into value added into revenue streams. recycling dysfunctions into revenue streams. So that's a little bit about the triple loop, and it's can be found at growth.com, and I'm trying to try it and tie it into quantum storytelling, those energy fields that we're all a part of. So what underground stories does your organization need to listen to? It's all about listening. I mean, that's something I learned from Henry Saval and other OD consultants and coaches, is to do a lot of listening before you change anything. And that's my little tidbit for today. So get out of the way of the sign. Quantum storytelling, a framework engaging right in the entanglement. Hi, I want to invite you to the 15th annual Quantum Storytelling Conference. Theme is building leadership, followership, and community with storytelling, an ensemble of influence. It's December the 17th to the 19th, 2025 at the Carson Events Center and Cultural Sites in Los Angeles. Find out more at info@DEIGroup.com. It's sponsored by a bunch of us, including Growth OD, True Storytelling Institute, and the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Group. So come to the Quantum Storytelling Conference, get your abstracts in. They are due the end of this month, and contact me if you need an extension. So that's it for now. Thank you very, very much.